All right, let's get more perspective on what it is that Comesa is trying to do to boost its competitive edge through infrastructure. Joining us in Nairobi, Sindiso Ngwenya, who's the Secretary General of Comesa. Thanks so much for your time, Mr. Ngwenya. Tell us more about the current conference and the undertakings being made in Nairobi between Comesa, the EAC and SADC.
Well, thank you very much. Let me also add that I'm also the chairman of the Comesa EAC and SADC tripartite task force, and I'll speak in that capacity with regard to the infrastructure conference that we're having here in Nairobi from tomorrow up to Thursday.
All right.
And yes, please.
All right, so tell us about the priorities. Obviously, you're talking about infrastructure, and we know that the major infrastructure deficit in Africa has added to the cost of doing business by 40%. It's a serious question in terms of accessing markets for the continent, creating new trade routes. How do you propose to deal with it?
Well, we're going to build on the successful conference that we held in Lusaka in April 2009, where Comesa EAC and SADC had a conference to address the infrastructure, challenges, and where we mobilized $1.2 billion to finance those infrastructure projects. With regard to the conference that we're having in Nairobi, this will focus on the Central Corridor, that is the corridor running from Dar es Salaam to the Great Lakes countries, and also from Mombasa, and also the new one from the Lamu port to be built in Kenya to South Sudan and also to Ethiopia, and also for the Horn of Africa from Djibouti to Addis Ababa and Khartoum. Now, the priority projects there are rail, road, ports, and inland waterways. These are the projects that we have. And it's important that these projects are funded because according to the projections for traffic that we have for this region, the capacity by both rail and road will be exhausted very soon, and hence the need for the maintenance of the existing infrastructure as well as the provision of new infrastructure. We have more than 500 participants for this conference, and 50% of these participants in the conference are from the private sector.
Right. All right.
And therefore, we do expect that the private sector will also play an important role in picking up those projects that are attractive and viable for the private sector.
It seems to be that there's going to be quite a bit of emphasis on the East and Southern African transport corridors. A lot's been said about the need to really create opportunities for landlocked countries like the new South Sudan and Ethiopia, heavily dependent on the port of Mombasa and needing to kind of decongest that kind of reliance. What sort of responsibilities are expected from regional member states in this regard? Because those are almost immediate and pressing concerns.
Well, the good news is that all these member states of the tripartite have really, at the highest political level, they have taken up ownership for these projects, to the extent that for some of the projects that were not bankable, they did finance them from their own resources. And what they are now looking for is that additional money in order to implement the projects. But also what is important here is that we also have private sector players that are playing an important role. For example, the Rift Valley Railway, which is run by Citadel, who is a private company, is a case in point.
All right. Now, we also know that the Horn of Africa at the moment is quite vulnerable. It's issues of drought, but it's also issues of security. What's your relationship with a regional body like IGAD that's been trying to create or support the idea of a transitional government in Somalia, and also trying to deal with sort of rogue, recalcitrant behavior on the part of militia in that part of the region? Because ultimately your infrastructure issues will be compromised by security issues.
Well, there has been an agreement with respect to division of responsibilities, that the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, that is IGAD, will be responsible for the peace and security issues in the Horn of Africa. And obviously, the member states of IGAD that are also member states of COMESA are playing an important role in that regard. In that, for instance, when you look at the Unison Force that is in Somalia, it is from the member states of IGAD. So quite a lot is being done. My appeal would be that it is high time that the international community, supported the troops, the African Union troops that are in Somalia in order to deal with the problem of the Al-Shabaab militia.
East
but
Africa
let me also
at the
indicate to you that as part of the projects that will be looked at by this conference, we're also looking at the Addis Ababa to Berbera corridor. Right. Berbera is in Somaliland, and although they are, when you look at the news, we always think that all Somalia is at war. Somaliland has been at peace since 1992, and that corridor is important for Ethiopia. And I do know that in the pipeline, there is about 4.2 billion projects for that corridor, which will run from Ethiopia to Berbera corridor, including the development of that port.
All right. Now, you're obviously in the Horn of or in East Africa right now, and that entire region has been plagued by an incessant drought that's really impacted on business and how it operates. This takes us to the issue of energy infrastructure, because so many of those countries rely on hydro energy. In terms of the investments that are being made in electricity and finding new sources, what's being done?
Well, quite a lot is being done because even if you look, for instance, the projects to be looked into is the interconnector between Ethiopia and Kenya, which will bring power not only to Kenya, but also to Uganda and other countries in this region. But in addition to that, there have been massive investments in hydro power generation, particularly in Ethiopia. But there's also investment in Kenya in geothermal energy. For example, one of the 90 megawatt plants of geothermal in Kenya is from the is by the private sector, not by government. So there is this investment in the traditional energy, but also in the new renewable energy. Obviously, I agree with you that the drought, the lack of rainfall in this region is impacting very, very severely, not only in terms of energy, but also in terms of the livelihoods of the pastoralists and the people who are involved in agriculture. But this is all as a result of climate change. And this is why it is important that the Green Fund that is being talked about under the COP77 for the conference that will be held in Durban, that all these monies is not only talk, but that the commitments are made so that we begin to adapt as a result of this climate change.
All right, so COMESA and the tripartite grouping adding their voice to COP17 coming forward. Aid for trade. Tell us more about aid for trade.
Yes.
What is meant by this concept? Because obviously there is a big drive to start opening up regional markets in Africa so that we start trading amongst ourselves. Many businesses are finding it challenging, dealing with trade protocols, needing to enter free market areas and just getting their goods manufactured and into market. How are you supporting these initiatives?
Now, you know very well that the tripartite primary preoccupation at the moment is based on 3 pillars, as decided by the Tripartite Summit in Santo in Johannesburg on the 12th of June. One of those pillars is the market integration, which is that we create one free trade area spanning the length and breadth of the tripartite area, which has a population of 600 million people and a combined gross domestic product of $1 trillion United States dollars. So we are working on that. The second one is infrastructure, and the third one is industrialization. And I can tell you that the business people are correct in the sense that when you've got these multiple trade regimes with different requirements, it becomes a cost for them to do business. And this is why we are moving with speed to ensure that the negotiations for the conclusion of the tripartite free trade area are concluded at the earliest opportunity, but also underpinned by infrastructure and underpinned by industrialization, which will address the supply side constraints that we have.